Like why we use this? We use this in case, like for example, if we want to develop a large software, right? This OOPS concept, it will allow us to like break our problems into small units of work. That's what we call it as objects. Okay, and then we will build the functions around those objects. That's how the OOPS concept will work. Okay, and this enable, like it will make us to reusability of code, so that we don't need to write the code again and again, and it will also remove the unnecessary or redundant code. Okay, and this OOPS concept is also called as dry concept. Dry in the sense, don't repeat yourself. Okay, and there are some main concept under this OOPS, which is like inheritance, encapsulation, polymorphism, abstraction. The concept is same in all the programming languages. The implementation will kind of differ based on syntax in Python. Okay, so we'll see one by one. Okay, so let me share the Python screen. Okay, so what we will do is, I'll recall something which we did in last day's session. Okay, let me print something. Let me type name. Number. Let me import some prior. Okay, so I have created several print line with checking the data type of everything. Let me give like this as well. Okay, now let me run the code. See, can you see the output, guys? In the output, there is a term called class, right? Okay, so every entity in Python is actually a class. Because of this class only, the same code can be reused for different application by creating an object. Okay, so let's say I have given import numpy as np, right? So here numpy is actually a module in OOPS concept. It is a class, and this np which I have given, that is a we are creating objects as np. Okay, that's why using that object we will be able to access all the functions that are inside that numpy. Okay, so the concept of class is actually a part of this object oriented programming. Okay, so now let's learn like what is a class or how to create them in Python. Okay, we'll start with the concept classes and objects. Okay, a class in OOPS, you can imagine them, it's like a template or a blueprint for creating an object. In similar, if I want to tell an example, let's say it is similar to a blueprint of a house, or let's say a car. Okay, with using that same blueprint, you can build the same house in a different location, right? So what does the blueprint will contain? It will contain each and every detail of that particular house, like what is the width of the column, what is the square feet, where the beam should come, every detail will be there. So using that blueprint, you can create a copy of that house wherever you need it, right? So similarly, we can create as many as number of objects and wherever we want, and all those objects will have same functions or same behavior of that particular class. Like how the same house blueprint we use will have a same number of rooms and same number of height, everything. That's the same we will be applying here. Okay, so as I said, we can create multiple objects for the same class. If I am giving import numpy as np, this np is the object. I can repeat the same line like just giving n, or I can give any number of objects for the class. Okay, and now let's talk about classes. Let's consider two species. Okay, we'll go for a dog and we'll go for one bird. Okay, so both of them will have unique characteristics, right? Let's say if you wanna let's say we'll have a comparison between them. So if you want to talk about a dog, you can say a dog has four legs, and if you want to compare it with bird, it has two legs. And what else? A dog, it cannot fly and fly. And you can have like goat on it like 42 teeth, and it has no teeth, it has a beak. You can like similarly they based on their biological differences, you will be categorizing into two different species, right? So why we are classification, we are doing this classification, it will allow us to study about the characteristics of the dog separately, bird separately. Like if you go to a veterinary doctor, they won't treat a dog with the same medical procedure for a bird, right? Okay, because it is exclusively developed for bird and respectively vice versa. Similarly, in this computer programming world, we will be actually trying to develop codes in such a manner so that they can be also used independently, right? For example, let's say first release of WhatsApp, right? It didn't have that video calling feature. Okay, the developers built this feature later and added to WhatsApp. For this purpose, they didn't reinvent the app. They had just add the additional feature in the existing application, right? That's how they did it. So this was possible because the developer built the app using the object oriented programming approach. Okay, so let's learn how to create a class in Python. So to create a class, right, we have to use the class keyword, then followed by we have to write the name of the class. So let me create a class for the same animals which we are talking. Let me create like this. So the keyword class should be there, and the name of the class should be written, and the first letter should always be in caps, and everything has to be followed with the colon sign. Okay, and as of now, I am, if I just want to create an empty class, it is same like creating empty function or empty loops. You can just give a pass. That means it is a empty class. Okay, and remember the first letter of the name of the class must always be capital. Okay, and let's say we are let's say we'll this is how we create an empty class in Python. Now let's say I don't want an empty class, I want to define some variables, that is called class variable. Okay, what is class variable? Normally we will create variable and we will assign the values, right? But when you create a variable inside a class, it is called as class variable. Okay, that variable which you are defining inside the class, it will actually defines the properties of that class. If you have a class dog, what is the property of a dog? The same thing that which we discussed. Let's say I'll create a variable as number of legs and I'll give the value as 4, and I'll give can fly and the value as false. So these are the variables which are called as class variable. Why? Because these are defining the properties of the dog or properties of that particular class. Okay, so now we have done everything, right? So in generally, if you create a variable inside a class, it's called class variable. Okay, now we don't have to add the pass keyword because we have already added some behavior to this class. Okay, now let's say I will try to print this variable now. Let's try to access the variable. I'll just try to print number of legs. And now when I run this code, it will create an error. Why? Because these variables which we have defined, right, they can be accessed inside the class only. Okay, like you won't be able to access it outside the class, but if you have to access it outside the class, then there is a way for that. So what you have to do, access it along with the class name. So you can do like this. So just print dog. If you print dog dot that particular, and it will show you what are the variables that you can access. If you want, I can just enter number of teeth. Now when I run it, I will be able to see the value for that particular variable. Okay, so this is the syntax. So you have to give class name dot variable name. If you want to access the class variables, this is how you'll be able to do it. Okay, now let's say I want to add some or let's say I want to create an object for this class because I want to access all the variables from another place, not from this class. Okay, so this is the point where the OOPS concept gets interesting. Okay, so let's say we have a class dog, right? There are actually different breeds of dogs available. Let's say husky or beagle, golden retriever. There are different breeds, right? They are all like same instances, or they are all like instances of the same species called a dog, right? They are all belong to dog species, right? Hence it means like if you create a class and it can have multiple instances. Similarly, let's say I can create an object of a class, and with use of that I can understand what kind of a class is that, what kind of breed like that. So let's say how to create a object for that particular class. We already have a class, we are going to create an object. Okay, so in object is also called as instance. Okay, so how to create it? To create the object, we just write the name of the object. Let's say I will create an object called um, husky, and give a equal to symbol, and then set it equal to the class name. Our class name is dog, followed by the common brackets. So this is how you will be creating an object for this class. Okay, now you have created the class, right? Okay, let me now print type function of husky. I'll just check what this husky is using the type function. See, it belongs to class main dog because this is a object that is created for the dog class. This is how we will be creating a class. Sorry, object. Let me create one more. Let's say the class can have multiple instances as well. Okay, like so now what we can do is we can print the properties of these object using print function also. Like now I can do the same thing. I can, so now this husky and beagle also will have the same properties, right? They are also dog. They also have the same number of 4 legs, right? If they are different breed doesn't mean they can have extra 1 leg. So we'll try to access the properties of the class using the objects. So the same thing, you have to give the object name dot variable name. So the same like we did here, right? Dog dot, it shown what are the variables available. The same will be applicable for the husky as well, because this is object is like we have copied a blueprint of the class and we have created a it's not a class, it's an instant, but this instant will have all the properties of the class. So now I can give the same number of teeth and I can print it. Yes, it is able to access that as well. Okay. So to call these variables like class variable, you have to use the operator which is called as dot operator, this operator. Okay. And now we have seen how to create a class, how to create class variable, how to create objects. The next thing in which we will be seeing is how to create methods or functions. Same, like we have like defined till now only the characteristics of a dog, right? Let's give them some functions, or let's say we'll give dog some action. So what does a dog do? Let's say it will bark, it will run, it can swim, it can bite, it will fetch a ball, it will do everything, right? So it will do many more. So let's define the action by creating a function. Okay, so if you create a function inside a class, it is also called as method. Okay, a class function inside a class will be called as method. Okay, now let's create a function in the same class which we have created. For def, normally I'll give a function name. Let's say I will add a function called bark, and I will add this self. Okay, so in any programming language, a function we will call as method. In here, Python, right? Whenever you are creating a function inside a class, or let's say whenever you are creating a method, that method will always take self object as an argument, this as an argument. Okay, and this is a method or function, and this self is a mandatory argument inside the function. Okay, and if you don't provide the self keyword, right, it will throw a type error. Let if I have to give colon to create a function. Let me print something, just a message like that's it. So now how to access your methods inside the function? You can use the same way. You can use like this. Since you can give husky dot bark function, it will work in the same way. It will print that function's output as well. Okay. Now we have created an object, we have created function, everything has done now. So what are the other things that we can learn in the classes? Now we will move to the next concept called constructors. Okay, so what is this constructor? Let's say like you want to build a application. In that application, it's like app, you are building a mobile app. Okay, it is having all the information about the family members, or let's say you are creating app to take census. Some people will come to our home, just take census. What is the father name, mother name, how many people are in the house, right? That kind of app we are creating. Okay, so what this app application will store, it will store the information of your family members. What kind of information they will store? It will store name, age, and kind of relation, what relation they are. Okay, right? To store information of each family member, you'll have to repeatedly create the same variables: name, age, relation, name, age, relation. You have to do it, right? If you see in the application form which the census people will bring, it will have only column names as name, age, and relation. Okay, you have to give values for that, right? The same, to avoid this repetition only, we go for the concept of constructors in this Python. Okay, in so what it will do is you declare the variables which you want to repeat again and again inside the constructors, so that you don't have to initialize them again. You can directly use them anywhere inside your class. Okay, so let's see how to create a constructor. The constructor name in Python is underscore underscore init, again underscore underscore, and this bracket. Okay, so this is how you represent the constructor. By default, this constructor will take self as a mandatory input. Okay, and the constructor, right, it will never return anything. Okay, so that you should not use the return keyword in the constructor in Python. Okay, so inside this constructor bracket, what you need to do, you can declare the variables whose values you have to repeat it again and again, like need to be initiated. Okay, such variables, you create some variables inside the constructor, right? That variables are called instance variables. Okay, and whereas the above one we created, right, these are called class variables. Now let's create a constructor. We will go with the new class because that's the same class we will be using. Okay, let me create a new class which is called family. Okay, so what I am trying to do is I am going to create a class called family. I am going to initialize a constructor. I will create one method as well, and I will create an object for this class. Okay, so let's create the constructor first for the class. So constructor is also a function. So give def, you can give init. You have to have the mandatory self keyword, and then so what are the variables that you are going to create now? So let's say I am adding first name, last name, age, and relation. So these variables are called instance variables. Okay, this is also a function creation, so you have to give like this, colon with proper indentation. So now what you have to do is you have to initialize the instance variables through the constructor. How will you initialize these variables? You have to use the self keyword dot the variable name is equal to variable name. So until you initialize that, you won't be able to use it as an instance variable. And one more thing is, so now after you initialize it, wherever you are using this variable in your class, you have to address them along with the self only, not with this name. So if you are using it in some methods inside the same class, you have to address them with self dot f name. So then only it will be identified by Python as instance variable, which are the part of constructor. Okay, now we have initialized them. Let me create one more function to generate full name. So this function will return and plus self dot last name. That's it. Okay, so when I call this function, it will give me the full name of that particular person. Okay, now let's create an object for this function. Let me create a first object as father, class name. See, now it is asking the values for that particular four variables which we have created in the constructor. So for father, if we are creating an object as father, you'll give the details of the father. Let's say I will give some values as relation as father. Now you have already created an object. Let's try to print it. So you know how to print the variables, right? You can give print function object name dot. See, these are the variables you will be able to access. If I give first name and print it, it will print the first name. Father dot L name. Full name is a function, so I have to give along with the brackets of the function. Now, when you run it, you will be able to see all those detail, right? So now this object, the father objects which we have created, right? It has access to all the variables and methods in your function. Okay. So now whenever you create an object, right, for a class, Python call the constructor of that particular class. Okay. The values inside whatever you enter inside the constructor, right? These will be assigned to the corresponding instant variables. So now constructor is like function which will allow you to initialize the those instance variables which you have created. Okay. And now if you want, you can create multiple relations, like you can create a mother object, sister, brother, everyone whom you want to add it, so that you don't have to give or initialize name, age, relation again and again. You can go with the direct concept. Okay. Any questions or doubts, guys, till now?
Yes, how do we access class variable inside of a
Sorry, class variable inside a
method of function class
not.
family? Let's say we have defined some variable here, and I want to access that variable inside full left. I have not written any constructor.
No, without constructor, you want to define a class name, that you can do it as a normal. Like I have a variable, let's say I have a variable called a is equal to 3. Okay. This is a class variable. I have not defined it inside the constructor. So if I want to use it inside this function, I can use it like normally. How will you use the variable? You can use that. You don't need to give any self parameters kind of thing.
Okay.
So the self keyword can be used only for the instance variable, like which you define it using the uh, constructor. Okay, and mostly like we will be using um, instance variable only. Class variable we will use, but kind of rare, because um, class concept itself, it came to reduce the number of codes, right? So once you initialize those variable inside the constructor, the usage, or you don't have to define them again and again in your methods or your child class or anywhere wherever you are using. But if you create only a normal class variable, that won't be able to access by the child class or the inherited classes. Okay. Can you just give me a minute, 1 minute? I'll just take my water bottle and come. Yeah. Okay, I think we have a question, like, can we have multiple constructors in some class? Okay, like explicitly this Python